What's up, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Goal Line Dynasty. Today, we're going to do a 1 QB rookie mock draft. Now that the NFL draft dust has settled, there is a lot to talk about. I know typically we'll cover Superflex, and I know a lot of people out there are covering Superflex, but, Tyler and I noticed we have a really hard time finding good, reliable 1 QB mock drafts out there on the YouTube, and we figured, hey, why not us? Let's put one out. We'll do that before we do our Superflex rookie mock. So I'm going to share the draft board here in a second. But first, Tyler, how we doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. It's been a minute since I've seen you. I'm loving your goatee. I like the dad look on you. The backwards hat with the cute eyebrows, and you just look good all around. The haircut and everything. But yeah, we can hop right into this one.
Well, I appreciate that, buddy. With the kid on the way, I have to get my best dad look going. You know what I mean? It's time in about 4 months. So the thing that's next is I ordered a grill, so that's coming in today. That was going to come whether I'm going to be a dad or not, but I got to order the white Skechers. I got to get some jean shorts. Get some Oakleys maybe. It's going to be a fun process. But I'm going to go ahead and kick us off here. So. I'm not going to actually hit this start draft button because I don't want any computers to go in here. But Tyler, last time we did this, when we did pre-draft, you took the number 1 spot. I took the number 2. Let's reverse it this time. I'm going to take the number 1 spot. And obviously, I'm going to take Bijan Robinson, right? Not really any sort of decision here. There is not a better landing spot that exists under the face of the sun than Atlanta for Bijan Robinson. This is a dream scenario. Tyler Algier is not going to be anything besides Bijan Robinson's water boy. And it sucks to say because I did really like Tyler Algier. I didn't actually think they were going to do this, but they went out, they did it. He's going to be amazing. Desmond Ridder's not a good quarterback, so they're going to lean on the run game a lot. And there is an overall RB1 finish as a rookie fully in play for Bijan Robinson. So I don't think there's any debate. Even in super flex leagues, I'm taking Bijan Robinson 101 in every scenario. So yeah, easy choice for me here. And I think an easy choice for just about everyone else in 1 QB to take Robinson.
Yeah, literally the perfect landing spot. You couldn't have said it better. I mean, Atlanta's game plan is to punch it down your throat, and Bijan Robinson will definitely do that. And the fact that they didn't upgrade at quarterback, actually, I mean, might help him. I don't know. I mean, they're going to have a stack. He's going to be playing against a stacked box, so I guess it probably doesn't help him in terms of efficiency-wise, but he's going to be loaded up with volume. So, yeah, dream landing spot there. And the evens are the tough spot in 1 QB as well, I guess, because I'm stuck between Jahmyr Gibbs and Jackson Smith and Jigba. With the draft capital we just saw Jahmyr Gibbs get, I mean, you sent me a stat the other day. Any running back who's been drafted top 12 in the last however long has seen at least 17 plus touches a game in their first year. And I mean, I think Jackson Smith and Jigba also complements DK Metcalf so perfectly. It's tough. If I'm on the clock, I'm going to go with my long time 102 and 1 quarterback leagues, and I'm just gonna go with JSN. Like I said, I think he complements DK Metcalf perfectly. And I mean, if you go back to when we saw him put up that monster season his sophomore year, that was next to Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. So I mean, being next to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in your first year seems like a really good situation for him. He's going to be a good friend of Geno Smith's, I think. I mean, Geno Smith threw the ball 600 times last year. I don't think we see that again, especially knowing that Seattle also just added to their run game with Zach Charbonnet, who I'm sure we'll talk about later. But yeah, I'm going to go with JSN here and not feel terrible about it. I might feel like I'm missing out in the next year or two when Jahmyr Gibbs is putting up points. But I think when Jackson Smith and Jigba's career plays out, I'm gonna be really happy that I took him here.
Yeah, and that makes my decision pretty easily, right? So briefly touching base on JSN, I mean, he has been your guy for ever, essentially, right? So no surprise that you would take him at 102. I did have him at 102 in the pre-draft process, but Jahmyr Gibbs going to Detroit, 12 overall. They traded away DeAndre Swift over draft weekend. I mean, he is now my 102. If I were picking two, I would have taken Gibbs personally, just because of the amount of production you're going to get out of him in the foreseeable future is going to be Gibbs is going to be everything that everyone wanted DeAndre Swift to be. And it breaks my heart to say it because I was rooting for DeAndre Swift so hard. And one of my pro comparisons for Gibbs is DeAndre Swift, right? So kind of weird that Detroit went out and took him, but it is what it is. I'm not going to fight the draft capital. He was, outside of the quarterbacks, the second offensive player drafted in the National Football League in the draft this year. I'm not going to argue with that. He's got a shit ton of passing upside. I know some people are worried about David Montgomery. Don't be. David Montgomery is going to be relegated to goal line touches and the occasional first down. Gibbs is going to dominate this offense. I think he's going to have the lion's share. I would say he's going to have at least 60% of the carries at minimum, and then he's going to get the nod nearly every third down or passing down situation between him and Montgomery. So sky's the limit for him. Tyler, you and I were actually just recently talking, I think it was yesterday. Jahmyr Gibbs has a strong case as the RB5 or RB6 in Dynasty rookie, and not rookie rankings, Dynasty rankings flat out. Like, Gibbs is firmly in the conversation as a top 5 running back immediately because of this landing spot and the draft capital. Not passing it up here, so I'm going to pass it back to you. You can make your pick at 104. I think these three, and Bijan's always going to be 101. JSN and Gibbs can kind of flip-flop depending on the league, but I would be very surprised if these three are not the consensus top 3 in every 1 QB league out there.
Yeah, I mean, Gibbs, there's only 4 running backs that I'd firmly take over him right now. Bijan, Brees, JT, and then CMC probably right now. That's where I start to argue. Jahmyr Gibbs could be that good. I was flat out wrong when I said that. I guess he was small and, thinking that it might be a concern for NFL teams and he could fall. Clearly he did not fall. He exceeded expectations. And I hope he's in for a monster year. I think even if David Montgomery is even in for the goal line there, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be on the field. I think he's going to be one of the best athletes in that Detroit offense, and they're going to want to put their best athletes on the field in the red zone. So I think Jahmyr Gibbs will play a part there. But here I am. This is where I get torn. I guess that's why I wanted to talk about Jahmyr Gibbs for so long, so I could think about this one. Quentin Johnston goes to such a good landing spot with being Justin Herbert's hopefully long-term wide receiver 1 there in LA. Jordan Addison teams up with Justin Jefferson and in a pass-heavy offense in Minnesota. I have my concerns about Jordan Addison, but I'm going with Jordan Addison over Quentin Johnston. For this reason and this reason only, I think I saw Jordan Addison do it for longer in college. I've known that he was great for a really long time, and I think Quentin Johnston is not by any means bust proof. I think he's got a really good opportunity where he went. This is about the best landing spot you could have gone to, but there's just too much. There's too many question marks with him, with his drops and all those things. I don't think I have those concerns with Addison. So I'm gonna stick with my gut and my pre-draft rankings here. And since I think they both go to good landing spots, I'm gonna stick with Addison over QJ.
Yep, I completely agree. Jordan Addison is my 104. QJ is my 105. This is my big difference between these two is I think Quentin Johnston, if he hits, he could be, not that he's got the same thickness as a guy like A.J. Brown, but the sky is the limit for him. He could be an A.J. Brown caliber wide receiver. We're talking about him as a top 5, top 6 dynasty wide receiver this time in a year or two. But his floor, his floor is the basement, right? There's a lot of concerns with QJ. One of his big things in college is the contested catch. usually a red flag, right? Because a lot of times that is not a stat that will typically translate into the NFL because secondaries are significantly better in the NFL than they are in college. NFL corners do not get bullied in the same way that college corners do. So it could be a rude awakening for Quentin Johnston, but if he does figure it out, I do think the sky is the limit for him. Jordan Addison, if you're a little more risk averse, he's the guy you go with. He does not have the same ceiling as QJ. Jordan Addison, I can almost guarantee, is never – I don't think a conversation of him being a top 5 dynasty wide receiver is really ever going to be on the table. Could be with QJ if he hits the ceiling. But with Jordan Addison, we don't have to worry about him going into the basement. Very worst case scenario, you're getting a safe weekly wide receiver 2 out of Jordan Addison. The guy that plays opposite of Justin Jefferson over the last 3 years has been a very solid producer for fantasy. And that includes KJ Osborne last year, right? As soon as Adam Thielen started taking less snaps and he got injured, KJ Osborne steps in, does really well in Minnesota. And I think that Addison is obviously significantly better than KJ Osborne. He's significantly better than Adam Thielen is at this point in his career. He's gonna be perfectly fine day one. But again, not the same ceiling. I'm gonna take that safety at pick 4, and then I'll leave the ceiling for pick 5 at QJ just to be a little more risk averse with my top 5 fantasy pick here. But so that's my take between those two players. I think it's kind of like a 2A, 2B receiver situation there. It just depends on how risky you want to get. But pick 106, you're back up on the clock. What are you thinking here?
I think I'm going to stick with the trend of going with the receivers. I think Zay Flowers is definitely underneath Addison and QJ for me just by a step. Because bad landing spot, and I don't know, I never considered Zay Flowers to be really a part of Jordan Addison and Quentin Johnston to begin with. And I mean, granted, his draft capital is pretty much the exact same. I hate the landing spot. I don't want to invest in a Lamar Jackson receiver. He does not put up a lot of fantasy points for his receivers. Although he's great, obviously, to have on your team. I don't want really my receivers having the ball thrown by him. Yeah, to them by him, however you would say that. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Zay here just because he's a receiver with first round draft capital, and yeah, I think it's the bottom of the real important guys. Well, I mean, I guess there's I think there's 1 or 2 guys that 3 guys probably that can definitely be a guy on your active roster. Maybe not active roster right away, but definitely serve a role on your dynasty team left here in the 1 QB draft.
I agree. And the draft gets really gross at this point. I have no arguments on Zay Flowers. He is below Addison and Johnston, but he's definitely ahead of anyone else on the list for me now. So I'm not really going to dispute that pick at all. Now, 107, I think a lot of people in 1 QB, whatever the order is, this 6 is probably going to be the consensus top 6. 107, there is no consensus between here and the end of a rookie draft. So my pick is going to severely surprise some people, and it's not going to surprise other people in the slightest bit. Honestly, it surprised me because I was not high on this guy. He was probably, I think, my 15th or 16th ranked player overall in my 1 QB rankings before the draft. But I'm going with Kendre Miller. Kendre Miller at pick 7. I don't know what to expect out of him, but I can tell you this. I do expect Alvin Kamara to be suspended. I do know that the Saints have 2 28-year-old running backs on their roster. I do know that Kendre Miller is going to get the starting nod at some point in 2023. And I do know that he has drawn a lot of comparisons to Marshawn Lynch throughout his college career. Now, he's had some injury issues. He didn't break out as early as you'd like him to, but he had an outstanding junior year, right? Like I think he had almost 1,400 yards, found the end zone like 15 or 16 times. I'm just going with these numbers off the top of my head, but I think that's about in the ballpark on where they were. I mean, dude is a tank, right? I'd like to see more of a pass catching ability out of him, but knowing what he can do and what I think he will do in New Orleans, this guy is going to work his way into, top 15, top 18 dynasty RB conversations probably as soon as the end of his rookie year, if not maybe the start of the 2024 season, once either Alvin Kamara or Jamal Williams or both are no longer there. So I'm going to take this guy here. There are at least 4 or 5 names that you could tell me you would pick at 107, and I still wouldn't bat an eye, because I think 107 through, off the top of my head, maybe 201 or 202, kind of one big tier for me. But Kendre Miller is going to be the talent and the situation that I'm going to bet on the most at pick 7.
Yeah, and I like Kendre Miller too. I mean, he has no pass catching ability whatsoever, obviously, but I mean, you know that when you draft him, you're going to get a guy who, I think he could be a consistent, 10, 11 point per game guy that you can plug in and definitely serve a role on your roster. And you're getting that in a 107 and in this draft. I think you're fine. Granted, I wouldn't have gone with him over Zach Charbonnet, who I'm going to go here. I'm going to go Charbonnet, again, based on draft capital. Even though, it's a shit spot for, to be with Kenny Walker and have to split that timeshare, but I think it'll be a 60-40, and I think Charbonnet will take a big chunk. And I don't know, they'll pick one of them to be the goal line guy. Maybe it'll be Zach Charbonnet, but I mean, I'm not sure really what his role is going to be, but I know he's a very talented running back. And, those guys, they score fantasy points regardless of the situation sometimes. I mean, even looking back at, Tony Pollard did his best to break out, over Zeke the last couple of years. Finally happened this past season. They finally gave him the share. But I mean, even back then, he wasn't a bad start in a start 10, a start 9, 1 QB league. He could definitely give you games. So even though Charbonnet, I think I'm pretty sure is going to be in the RB2 role for Seattle. I think I'm still gonna take my shot on him here.
The one thing about Charbonnet, he's the 3rd best running back talent in this draft. I won't disagree with that. I hate this situation, though, in Seattle. I really do. So much so that Charbonnet, again, not surprised that you have him at 8, but he's my number 14 ranked guy in 1 QB right now. And the only reason why is the situation. I just don't understand what Pete Carroll and his crew are thinking, because Charbonnet, in my mind, he feels like a poor man's Kenny Walker. Like, they feel like very similar players in a sense. And Charbonnet doesn't really have a ton of pass catching upside. Neither does Kenny Walker. I don't even want to deal with the headache of trying to project what that split in the workload is going to be. So I'm not going to knock the pick at all. I'm a big believer in saying screw landing spot. Let's go for talent. And if we're going for talent, Charbonnet is the most talented skill position player on the board here. So nothing wrong with the pick. Seriously, nothing wrong with the pick. Just not where I would personally go because of the situation.
Yeah, we all know it's a shit landing spot, but I mean, it is what it is. And I'm just going to, like I said, I mean, at the 108, you have a headache anyways in a 1 quarterback this year. So
exactly. So I have more of a headache here at 109. I'm going to go Michael Mayer, though. A lot of people are going to be picking Dalton Kincaid over Michael Mayer, largely in part for the draft capital, which, by the way, was 8 picks, 9 picks they were only separated by. Obviously, going to the Bills is probably more ideal than going to the Raiders, but Michael Mayer is really good. So is Dalton Kincaid. But Michael Mayer is one of the guys that this time last year, when we were talking about 2023 rookie picks, Michael Mayer's name was constantly coming up. We have been so excited to draft this guy for the last year. Not us specific. Well, yes, us specifically, but everybody. Everybody, when they would bring up the rookie 2023 class, Michael Mayer was always one of the names that got thrown into the hat. Dude is supremely talented. He should have been the first tight end off the board, in my honest opinion. I think he's going to be a really damn good fantasy asset for my squad. The one thing that I hate about taking tight ends in the first round is no matter how good the tight end is, unless it's Kyle Pitts or Evan Ingram, right? They're probably not going to produce much in year 1. But Michael Mayer kind of has the opportunity to. There's not a hell of a lot going on over there with the Raiders besides Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. So Michael Mayer actually could be a slightly early producer for fantasy. But either way, long-term, I think he's my best option here at 109 if I'm staying away from those quarterbacks. So give me Michael Mayer. Give me the hype. I'll take him.
Yeah, and I think he's in a good tight end room, to be in. He's got experienced guys around him, and I think he's a mature guy, and I've always liked Michael Mayer, watching him at Notre Dame. I think I would prefer obviously the landing spot with Buffalo, but I've always thought that Michael Mayer was the better player. I mean, Dalton Kincaid is not a blocker, so he's not going to be a a 3-4 down or a 3 down guy as a tight end. He'll be in there in passing situations. I think Michael Mayer has the opportunity to do it all. And especially the fact that they basically let go of Darren Waller to make this one happen, because I think they were targeting him. But I think here I'm gonna go, even though I don't like it, I'm gonna go with a quarterback in the first round of a one quarterback league, and it's gonna be Anthony Richardson. Highest upside, best spot, best landing spot. Granted, I'm not taking him at the 102 in Superflex leagues. I'm still taking Bryce Young there because he's the number 1 overall pick, and that is what it is. But in a one quarterback league, give me the upside, a guy who can win me a week, and I'll have Kirk Cousins on my bench if he doesn't pan out, or I'll go buy Kirk Cousins for second round pick or something like that, a mid third round pick or whatever. And we'll figure it out from there. But I'm taking the upside here. Anthony Richardson could be, top 5, could be an MVP level quarterback if he hits his absolute ceiling. Will he get there? Who knows? But worth it at the 110 for me.
No, I agree. And honestly, if I didn't have a Carolina Panthers bias, I would be feeling the exact same way about Anthony Richardson. I would say that the offer or the upside that he offers is worth taking a stab on in the late first round here in 1 QB leagues. There's nobody on this board that I'm absolutely in love with from a fantasy perspective. Anthony Richardson is the upside available at 110. So I do really like that pick. Looking forward to my 111, going back to the tight end. Well, obviously I'm drafting for 12 different teams here. I wouldn't actually draft both of these tight ends if I had both of these picks in real life. You don't need 2 tight ends. But Kincaid, Mayer is only slightly ahead of him for me. And a lot of it probably does come from the name value of just hearing Michael Mayer's name so many times over the last year. Kincaid has the draft capital advantage. Kincaid has the landing spot advantage. Kincaid, if Mayer is a 100 on my athletic score, he's not. But for example, if Mayer's a 100 on my athletic score for a tight end, Kincaid's a 98 at worst, right? So in my mind, these are very similar players. I just happen to like Mayer and just his history a little bit better. But yeah, I'm taking both of these tight ends in the late first round in just about any scenario that I can think of in 1 QB. Dude, it's a weird draft. It's a really weird year to have draft picks, and anyone who's anybody has a shit ton of them, right? Because we've been told to buy these 2023 picks. And now I've been playing Dynasty for about 5 or 6 years now. And this is by far the toughest rookie draft that I've ever had to navigate through. I don't know if you share that feeling, but 2023 is the year I am struggling with my rookie rankings.
Yeah, it's granted it's so soon after the draft, but it has been tough. There's a lot of tough decisions here, and like you said, the tiers are pretty big in a lot of cases. We just had a draft today where I think Kincaid went at the 106 or something like that. It's like, are we shocked that he went over Zay Flowers, that somebody like Dalton Kincaid over Zay Flowers? I'm not necessarily in shock at this point. If you told me that Dalton Kincaid was going at the 106 in 1 quarterback drafts last year, I would have been really shocked and probably laughed at you. But it's happened, and it is what it is. But really, you could order these guys in any way. I could argue Anthony Richardson at the 107. You could argue probably Charbonnet at the 107, Mayer at the 107, whatever you want to do. It is very tough. And I am finding that, especially with the 112 here. I don't want to go with another quarterback yet. I think they definitely should go mid-second as far as the other quarterbacks go, and I'm sure I'll be taking one there. But here I'm going to go with the running back, who's also in a pretty dreamy landing spot, and a spot that a lot of people wanted to see him go to, in Devin Achane. He is obviously in an explosive offense. I think Tua is a little bit underrated right now. He's going in like, the third round of startup drafts, mid third round, late third round type deal. And I'm totally fine getting an elite guy in the second round and then taking Tua in the third, given that price. So I think that offense is at maybe a little bit of a discount right now because of Tua's uncertainty, but I'm fine. He was explosive when he was healthy last year. So I think he can definitely return to that. And I know that he was talking about retirement, but I am going to stick with Devin Achane, who is a very good pass catching back, very fast and very explosive in an offense full of people who are very fast and explosive. So I think he definitely has weekly upside and startability pretty much right away because it's an empty running back room for the most part. So yeah, give me Devin Achane, who was drafted in the early third round this year.
Yeah, A-Chain's a good pick. He's my RB4. Funny enough, he's my number 12 overall player. So the fact that you took him at 112, no arguments for me. Like you said, perfect landing spot. Don't necessarily think he'll ever turn into a workhorse or anything, but there is always going to be a role for him on this offense. They went out, they got their guy, and there was rumors that Miami would be interested in trading for Dalvin Cook. Clearly, they never did that. So A-Chain, a nice speedy runner. He's going to fit in perfectly fine with that offense. I think it's a really good pick. So here we go at 201. And you're not going to have a chance to take your second quarterback midway through the second because I'm taking him here at the beginning of the second. Bryce Young is my 10th overall ranked player in one quarterback league, so I'll be pretty thrilled to get him at number 13. Again, there's definitely a Panthers bias in here. I will look straight at this camera and fully admit to you there's a 110% Panthers bias when it comes to Bryce Young over Anthony Richardson. Now, to your point, in Superflex leagues, taking Bryce Young over Anthony Richardson at 102 is the smart thing to do. Richardson, if he hits his ceiling, he's going to be absolutely stellar. But you don't want your second overall pick to be a bust. And Anthony Richardson, out of all three of the top-rated quarterbacks in this class, Anthony Richardson does very much so have the highest probability of being a bust. And I don't have the cojones to take him at 102 over Bryce Young. And in one quarterback leagues, I'm fine with chasing the upside with Anthony Richardson, but I still share the same sentiment. I'll kind of take the safety with Bryce Young. Bryce Young went number 1 overall. Carolina has completely revamped their coaching staff. They've revamped their offense. They're going to have, as of right now, heading into 2024, they're going to be like top 5 or top 6 for salary cap space. And if Bryce Young has a productive rookie year and that coaching staff shows that they're for real down in Carolina, they are going to have free agents knocking at their door at the end of the 2023 season. So I think a lot of big improvements to this team are coming in the next 2 to 3 years. And Bryce Young going number 1 overall, they dealt away a king's ransom for him. He's going to, I mean, I would love to see him have this job for the next 15 years, right? But from a dynasty's perspective, we still know he's going to have a job this time 3-4 years down the line. That's the safety I'm going to go with. Fine with taking that here at 201 because all of these guys, while there is upside to be found, in my opinion, everyone's kind of a dart throw at this point. There's some that have a higher statistical chance of hitting than others, but yeah, a lot of dart throws this year because really just weird landing spots and draft capital all across the board. So give me the Bryce Young safety. Give me the Bryce Young safety.
And if you just make this easy on yourself and take CJ Stroud with your next pick, then I'm gonna have a bone to pick. But I was kind of stuck between Rashee Rice and Josh Downs, but I think I'm gonna go with Rashee Rice here. Got decent draft capital in the second round. So going to obviously an explosive offense in Kansas City with a lot of unclarity, if that's a word, in their receiver room. I mean, Sky Moore, obviously, there. Whoever, what are the other guys they have there? The whoever's, right? The guys who didn't pan out. And I think Rashee Rice could catch a piece as Travis Kelce is aging. And yeah, we could see something out of him this year. I'm sure he'll have the opportunity to play. So we'll see how that goes for him. It obviously did not work out for Sky Moore last year. So we'll see if this home run swing works for Kansas City and he turns into a weapon for Pat Mahomes and for my team here.
The issue that I have with Rashee Rice is it's like they already have Sky Moore. They already have Kadarius Toney. Kind of feels like two very similar players, right, to Rashee Rice. But if he hits, I mean, dude, he is explosive. It is going to be a lot of fun. Plus, how could you not want the wide receiver that's tethered to Patrick Mahomes for the foreseeable future? Like, it's always a good bet, right? So I won't argue with that pick. I think I have Rice as my 20th overall guy. But again, dude, like there is no such thing as a consensus in this 2023 class. So pick 203. I know you said you would have a bone to pick with me if I took CJ Stroud. So I won't. But I would like to fully disclose CJ Stroud also firmly in my top 15 for one QB ranking. So I have no problem taking him at 15. But for the sake of Tyler being unhappy with me, I'll switch it up. I'll go with my next ranked guy, my number 16 guy. Where is he? Roschon Johnson. Roschon Johnson, he is our first day 3 guy taking in this draft. Now, granted, it was the first pick of day 3, right? So that's cool to say, right? He was so close to being a day 2 pick. But Roschon Johnson, man, he's so much fun to watch. He really is. He is going to have a significantly easier time getting on the field as a pro, which is weird because usually you would think that getting on the field in college would be easier than as a pro. Roschon Johnson is sharing the field with Khalil Herbert and Deontay Foreman. Do you know who he was sharing the field with in college? It was our 101 Bijan Robinson. Roschon Johnson is a good running back. And if I'm going to bet on, and maybe taking the risk here at 203 over our round 2 and round 3 wide receivers, maybe it's a little unwarranted. I don't know. But I do like to grab my running backs a little bit earlier and get a little risky with them. You know, we hit on Dameon Pierce last year. We hit on Tyler Algier last year. Roschon Johnson is going to be that version. I saw something actually online. I think it was from the Fantasy Stock Exchange. It was Corey over at the Fantasy Stock Exchange. And he compared pre-draft Roschon Johnson to Ramondre Stevenson. And he's kind of ended up in a very similar situation to Ramondre. He's got similar draft capital to Ramondre. And I completely agree with that comp. So if my ceiling with Roschon Johnson at the 203 is Ramondre Stevenson, and Ramondre Stevenson just finished as like the number 8 overall running back in PPR, yeah, I'll take that risk over taking a dart throw in any of these receivers. So give me Roschon here.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Roschon. I always liked what he added to that backfield in Texas behind Bijan, and he I think he is in a really good landing spot in a running back needy room. Funny enough, Chicago was in the running. People thought that they could be taking Bijan Robinson with one of their early picks, but obviously didn't happen that way. But they got his college teammate, so I like Roschon there. But I am going to go with our guy. I guess this will be our pick. But I'll go CJ Stroud here. Regardless of my quarterback room, I think I'll take a shot on CJ Stroud being a consistent quarterback in a 1 QB. I'll spend the 204 on that security. I mean, he was drafted 2nd overall, and obviously Houston isn't a great spot, so I'm probably not going to see immediate upside there, but he's a guy who can definitely pan out into a long-term franchise quarterback for Houston. So I'll go CJ Stroud and make the pick easy on myself and hopefully tougher for you.
Yeah, I like CJ Stroud. I really do. There's nothing wrong with him. I would have been, I mean, you remember even just a month and a half ago, I was perfectly fine if Carolina was going to take Stroud. There's a lot to like about this game, about his game. He's nice and accurate. He is not a running quarterback, but he's definitely a mobile one, right? And he can get the job done. Prototypical size that you want from your franchise quarterback. Nothing wrong at all. I think that is the definition of the safe pick at 204, so I'm not going to fault you for that. Now, you went with the safe pick at 204. I think I'm going to take the risky pick at 205. So I have six wide receivers in this tier that I'm taking somewhere between the 204 and the 209. And I put them all together and I say, okay, this is who I'm going to take if I need safety on my roster. This is who I'm going to take if I'm going for risk. This is yada, 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 whatever. I'm going to assume that I'm going for risk. I'm going to go big or go home. And I want to say that out loud so I can justify the pick here, right? I'm taking Jonathan Mingo. Jonathan Mingo, 39 overall pick in the NFL draft. I was, as a Panthers fan, I was surprised to hear his name called that early. But there was a tweet that went out the other day. I forget who it was, but like they highlighted the first wide receiver taken of the second round over the last like 5 or 6 years, and it was like Christian Watson, T. Higgins, Elijah Moore. There's a couple other good guys in there. It was a list of all pretty damn good name wide receivers. And obviously that's probably just a coincidence, but there's a reason why he has top 40 draft capital. And that's because an NFL team believes in him. They believe in the athleticism, and they believe in the opportunity that they can give him. Now, Jonathan Mingo is going to enter as a rookie with Bryce Young. They're going to be hanging out a lot. Bryce Young's going to start off on the second team offense. Mingo's going to start off on the second team offense. These two are going to be able to build a rapport nice and early. Now, Mingo is like getting Quentin Johnston a full round later, except the ceiling isn't quite as high, but the floor, like the range of outcomes is still crazy. This is a total boomer bust player. You're getting a guy that is, the alpha wide receiver type. He's a really interesting guy to go after. If he hits his ceiling, you're looking at a top 12 to top 15 dynasty wide receiver in a couple of years. If he bottoms out, he's going to be the next Terrace Marshall, right? Like drafted in the early to mid second round in our dynasty drafts here, and then he's going to fall out and be absolutely no one. Ironically enough, he went to the same team. So if I was going for a safety pick here, I would have picked Josh Downs. Right. So I won't explain that too much because I know we're going to touch on Josh Downs probably in the next few picks, but I went safe with a couple of my picks here. So we're taking the risky one, taking Jonathan Mingo at 205.
Yeah. And Jonathan Mingo, I mean, a name who started popping up in the last couple of weeks. I mean, really good combine guy. I mean, he's very athletic. Not sure how great of a football player he is, but we are in the mid-second round. And I'm going to be happy to take the guy you just mentioned, Josh Downs, who I really think is a good football player. So, I mean, Josh Downs, he had that great year, his sophomore season that was absolutely absurd. He was just a stat monster, and obviously did not have the same production this past season, but has everything that I think you need to succeed as a role-playing wide receiver in the NFL, and he could definitely turn into a starter for a fantasy roster. So he's a guy who, we were definitely talking about taking in the later parts of the first round not too long ago. So I'm gonna be happy to get him here, even though he was a third round guy. I'm gonna take Josh Downs.
Yeah, I like the pick. I really was surprised how far he fell in the NFL draft, but it is what it is. The NFL draft is a fickle bitch sometimes. So I took my risky pick at 205. I would say Josh Downs in this tier that I have. Josh Downs was by far my safest guy. So I'm going to go with Jalen Hyatt next. I was pretty high on Jalen Hyatt before the draft. I guess NFL teams didn't feel the same. I don't love the landing spot landing with the New York Giants because I don't know if I necessarily trust Daniel Jones to support a receiver of Jalen Hyatt's caliber. Then again, I mean, he hits the long balls to what's his face? Why can't I think of his name? Darius Slayton. Hits the long balls to Darius Slayton, and Jalen Hyatt is much better than Darius Slayton at hitting those long balls. Definitely, he's not fully a one-dimensional receiver, but his strengths definitely lie in the vertical department. He won the Biletnikoff, so he's clearly a good wide receiver. But you could also make the argument that he only won the Biletnikoff because his teammate, who we're probably going to talk about in the next couple of picks, Cedric Tillman, went down with injury, was a red shirt, right, and just couldn't produce next to Jalen Hyatt. So who knows how that reward really hit Jalen Hyatt. But one thing's for sure, bad receivers don't win that award. So I'm going to take that bet here at 207 and be pretty happy with the value that I'm getting there.
Yeah, I also like Jalen Hyatt. He's a guy who we thought could have been drafted at the back end of the first round of the NFL draft, and obviously fell for a while, just like Josh Downs did. So yeah, I think Mingo and Hyatt are probably the same tier. But I'm gonna go back to the running back room here. And I think I'm gonna go Tajay Spears because he, I think, has the clearest path to carries. I think that Derrick Henry can only last so long. Granted, Tajay Spears obviously probably can only last so long, knowing what we know about him and his knee. But yeah, I'm at the 208, and I'm going to take who could be a handcuff running back for Derrick Henry, who definitely has a place on a dynasty roster.
And he won't just be a handcuff. He's going to play third downs. I really think so. The biggest knock with him is his injury concerns, right? And his lack of owning a second ACL. That definitely doesn't make me feel too good. But hey, if Tennessee liked him enough to give him day 2 draft capital and they think they can work with it, they're clearly going to be careful with his knee. He's never going to have a lion's share, workload, even if something does happen to Derrick Henry. But I do like Spears. And admittedly, before I realized that Tajay Spears does not have a second ACL, I was tempted to rank Spears as the RB3 of this class. So kudos. I do like getting that at 208. Definitely a risk associated, but again, 208, you can take those calculated risks. But 209, I'm going to take the other receiver that I was just talking about, Cedric Tillman. Big, bully, tested. I mean, I really love how he looks on the field, man. Like, he goes up there. He is an absolute bully. He's got really good ball tracking. He adjusts to the ball. He seems really smart. I think that a lot of people, when they look at Cedric Tillman, they think that he may struggle to get separation, but I really don't think that's an issue at all. I think that his film does show a fair ability to gain separation, but he's also a big dude that can win the contested catch, right? He doesn't solely rely on the contested catch. He does have some pretty good footwork, but I will say, going to Cleveland in the 3rd round, I think he immediately slots in as probably the number 2 red zone target behind David Njoku for this offense. I think Tillman is going to fit right in here. And it sucks because I'm a really big fan of Donovan Peoples-Jones, but I think Cedric Tillman is brought in to replace Donovan Peoples-Jones after they have to let him go this year. So I think it's going to be a slow buildup when it comes to Tillman, but I think he's going to get the starting nod, potentially even as the wide receiver 2 on this offense by the start of the 2024 season. So with him, I'm more betting on talent than anything. Really a big fan of his. So I like taking him at 209.
Yeah, love Cedric Tillman. I'm going to go with the last wide receiver I think that's actually in this tier, probably with Mingo and Downs, Hyatt, Tillman. I'm going to go Marvin Mims. Drafted in at the very end of the 2nd round to Denver, rather. And yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily love the spot, behind Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, but he did get draft capital, and I don't think Cortland Sutton's really that good. And that Denver offense did start to click at the end of the year, so we'll see what Marvin Mims and my 210 can turn into.
It's really funny because Tyler, you and I are simultaneously doing our slow draft, right, in our own Dynasty League, and it is 1 quarterback. Now, granted, they're all in different orders, but we're actually on pick 211 or 212 now. You're on the clock. Pick 212 in our 1 quarterback real draft. We're at 211 here in our 1 quarterback mock draft. And every single player, with the exception of 1 guy, are all within this exact same range that we have them in our real draft. So it's kind of interesting to see the discrepancies between the two. But overall, I think there might be a small consensus starting to form. So interesting for sure. But so you took Marvin Mims. I do like that pick. Hate the landing spot, despise the landing spot, but like the player a lot. That's one of those situations. Bet on talent and hope that the rest is going to come. But it's funny that I bring up the consensus of our 1 QB league, because the one player that hasn't been drafted in our own mock draft right here that was drafted in the real draft is Sam Laporta, and that's exactly who I'm going to take here. Now, granted, in our real draft, I'm not going to say any names, but one of our friends took him at 112, which is just entirely too early for my liking. But Sam Laporta landing in Detroit, great landing spot. Great landing spot. TJ Hawkinson was perfectly fine in Detroit. Then obviously he went to Minnesota and exploded. I think Sam Laporta, it's going to take him at least a year to get up to speed. I'm not expecting really anything out of him in year one, but Detroit did spend early draft capital on him, right? He was a second round receiver, an early second round tight end, I should say. And he is a good receiver. So I would say that he is Detroit's long-term plan at the tight end position. He does join a crowded offense that has Amon-Ra St. Brown. They have Jameson Williams. They now have Jahmyr Gibbs. They now have David Montgomery. I'm sure they're going to be bringing in someone else. Marvin Jones is still there. I know he's like 65, but it is what it is. But Laporta is going to have every chance to develop and become the starter in Detroit. And I think looking at the board, I think this is where the most upside currently is, where the upside or where the pros do outweigh the cons. Because I do see one player on here that has a supreme amount of upside, but I couldn't justify taking him in the second. So I'm going to let you pick 212. And then if you don't take that guy, we'll bring him up real quick because I have a feeling you know exactly who I'm talking about.
I haven't really scrolled the board too deeply, unless me and you are just on the same page somehow about a name that I like. But I'm gonna go with Tank Bigsby because he's the only guy left on the board who was drafted in the third round. Everybody else was drafted in the fifth or sixth. So I'm gonna go with Tank here and hope that maybe he finds a path to touches and maybe ETN, I don't know, breaks his foot or something, and I get some starts out of Tank Bigsby.
Well, Jaden Reed did go. I think he was a second round pick, maybe third round pick to Green Bay. But I mean, that's suddenly a crowded receiver room with a couple of similar minded or similar bodied wide receivers in Green Bay. Nothing wrong with Tank Bigsby though. I think that Jacksonville said that they wanted to add a couple big-bodied running backs to go along with Travis Etienne, and there you go. That's their one that they added. So nothing wrong with the pick at all there. Then again, I'm not really going to yell at any pick at the 212 because we're in officially go get your guy territory. And before we wrap it up here, let's go get one more guy, Kayshon Boutte. What are we doing with him, Tyler? So I had to bring him up because he has been your guy. He has been your absolute guy throughout this entire process. And you went on the record even just about a month ago saying that you're still tempted to take him in the late first, early second. Now, granted, you did not expect him to fall to the sixth round in real life. So I'm not going to give my thoughts on Boutte because I couldn't do it justice. Before we end this video, I want your thoughts on Kayshon Boutte falling to round 6, going to New England.
Yeah, quite the fall from grace for our friend. I mean, what is there to say about it? I don't know if you're just trying to rub it in or what. I love the guy's talent. I'm sitting here on the clock at the 212, ironically, and can't pull the trigger on Tank Bigsby, even though I probably need running back depth on the roster that I have currently. I'm pretty set with receivers. I just feel like I want my share of Kayshon Boutte, and I mean, I don't know. You can draft him in the early third. It's tough to, tell people out there to go draft Kayshon Boutte over Tank Bigsby because I think the right thing to do is Tank Bigsby. But here I am on the clock, and probably just because I want my share of Kayshon Boutte, and I don't have many third-round picks on any of my dynasty rosters, I think I'll probably just go and get my guy in this situation. And so, I mean, the best trade offer I have right now is back to the 307. I can't guarantee that he'll be there then, just because people know his name. So, yeah, I think he can go anywhere from the mid to late third in one quarterback, or I guess even in super flex.
Yeah, I had to bring him up just to kind of watch you squirm, but I also did want to genuinely hear your thoughts on him because I think he is the perfect third round flyer. He's where do I have him in my rankings? I have him at the 304. So the pick 28 overall is where I have him in my 1 QB rankings. Surprisingly, just behind Will Levis. Will Levis is 303 for me. Kayshon Boutte is 304. I think if I'm actually on the board and I don't need a quarterback in my 1 QB league, I probably will get a bit more risky and go with Boutte, right? But in the grand scheme of things, you're right. It's really hard to look someone in the eye and say, hey, man, go draft Kayshon Boutte. But there's a lot of opportunity in New England. And if anyone's going to sort him out, it's going to be Bill Belichick and the rest of that coaching staff. But it'll be interesting to see. Anyway, that's going to do it for us here on Goal Line Dynasty. Thanks for tuning in today. I know, a lot to talk about, a lot of rookie coverage to get into. We will be back at some point in the not so distant future with our super flex draft. We'll probably go through 2 more rounds like this, but to be completely honest, it's not going to be much different with the exception of moving Richardson, Young, and Stroud up to those first 3 spots. And then, if we're looking at super flex, Will Levis probably late first, Hendon Hooker early to mid second, I would say off the top of my head without speaking for Tyler. So, we'll see. A lot of content coming over the next few weeks. And a lot of it will be revolved around the rookies and the impacts that they do have on the rest of the league. So before we get going, Tyler, any closing remarks?
Not much. I mean, I kind of like the way this played out. I was glad that, we knew these guys who were talking about as you get into the 3rd and 4th round, it gets really, really, really dirty. But unfortunately, this is how it panned out. Charbonnet fell. That I guess Flowers kind of moved up a little bit. But I mean, this is kind of how things played out not too long ago. I mean, now there's an argument between Gibbs and JSN, like a really clear argument to go Gibbs over him if you really want to make that pick. But other than that, I mean, this is pretty much how we expected it to play out. A couple of running backs would be drafted in the 3rd round that we would, take swings on in the 2nd. But I definitely didn't expect Jonathan Mingo to get drafted where he did. But, that is what it is. Good luck to you in Carolina. And, I'm happy with how my team panned out.
Yeah, well, if Mingo pans out, I'll be pumped. If he doesn't, I won't be surprised. Anyway, that's going to do it for us here on Goal Line Dynasty. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment. If there's any content that you'd like to see or you have any suggestions for us, we are all ears. But that being said, for myself, for Tyler, for Goal Line Dynasty, we will see you next time.